I had one to the bottom. Motion good.
At this time, we will begin the work study session for the Adrian City Commission for March 6, 2023. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Hall,
Present.
Commissioner Robert,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Strayer,
Present.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Present.
Commissioner Gauss,
Present.
all commission members present.
At this time, I will turn it over to our city administrator, Greg Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first item tonight is a presentation by a group named Flock Security regarding license plate reader technology, something Chief and I have been talking about as a way we might be able to up our game in terms of public safety. Anything you want to say by way of introduction, Vince, before we let the rep have the floor?
Sure, thank you, good evening. License plate technology is not necessarily new, it would be new to us. We explored it, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago. We were looking at a vehicle mounted model. Our representative tonight, Laura Ann Holland, she's going to explain a passive system with pole mounted cameras that read as the vehicles go by. So kind of a departure from what we looked at initially, but I think this will be a much better fit for what we have in mind. Can you hear us okay, Laura?
Yes, I can. Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
ahead.
awesome. Thanks so much, Chief, and thank you, City Administrator, for adding us to the agenda tonight. I am Laura Ann Holland, and I work in community education and local government policy for Flock Safety. And so we'll spend some time tonight talking through what the system does, how it can help your police department, and also some of the protections that we've built into place for local communities that want to use our technology. Before I get started on talking a little bit about how our license plate reading vehicle recognition technology works, I do want to start by sharing a story about how we started, because I think it can help explain our approach to this technology and some of the unique ways that we structure our partnerships with local communities. So we were founded in 2017 by someone who himself was a victim of property crime, and he had cameras on his home and provided that footage to police. But what they told him was that what they really needed was a picture of the back of the car. They really needed a license plate in order to find a solid lead. And so he went out and did some research to try to figure out how much it was going to cost his community to put those up in his neighborhood to address the burglaries. And it was going to be really expensive. And so he decided, I'm going to build this myself and build a solution for my community. So he did. And a couple of weeks later, the same individuals came back to burglarize another home. And they were actually able to find the individual who did it based on the device that he created. So I tell you that story because I think it's helpful to know that we started as a solution for neighborhoods, for residents who wanted to work closely with police to solve the issues that their communities were facing. And that's how we've approached all of our technological development since then, having the same concerns as other citizens and neighbors. So I don't know about what things are like in Adrian, but most of the departments that we work with are struggling with several things, either an increase in crime that they had not seen before, increase in violent crime, especially. We see a lot of struggles with recruitment and retention in policing, as in many industries right now. And we see a real need to build trust with the community. We believe that technology can help us address all of those problems and has. We know that our technology for many departments has helped multiply their force to be a more effective tool so that law enforcement don't have to spend hours sifting through video footage and can instead get a very quick lead. I think these statistics are really helpful. Things are different in Adrian, a little bit better in Adrian, but nationally, it's actually really challenging to solve crime because law enforcement don't always have the leads that they need, right? They might get an eyewitness account or they might get a description, but being able to identify an individual specific to the crime at hand and make sure that they were in that location is pretty challenging. But we also know that over 70% of crimes involve a vehicle. And these statistics are from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So when we're thinking about ways to find solutions to address our case backlogs, to get ahead of investigations, we know that providing vehicle data is a solution that will help your department astronomically. So how does the tech work? We are a vehicle recognition system. We look at the back of a car and take a picture and then send that picture through an analysis that can identify the license plate number, the state of the license plate, the make of the car, the color of the car, and the number of times that it has been seen in the last several days. We know that this image is essential for police investigations, and I'm sure that Chief can probably describe some specific cases where having that image would have been really helpful for the police. I think another piece to note here is that this is not just a license plate reader, right? Like Chief said, it's a little bit different. We look at the entire image of the back of the car because as we're seeing now, many people are removing their plates, or they use a paper plate, or they swap plates. And so this can actually give you more data points than a traditional infrared license plate reader alone. We're a pretty cost-effective subscription service. Going back to our founding story, right? We started wanting to be a solution affordable to all types of communities. And we are really proud of the service and the model that we've created, where we basically lease our devices and access to our system for a flat rate fee for your community. We're also infrastructure free, so we can use solar panels. We can hook up to electricity. It all depends on what the map is that your chief creates, but we try to be flexible in our solutions so that you aren't dependent on having to run fiber out to an area where you know that you'll need these devices to scan. From the get-go, I think it's important to note, while you guys are looking at this image on the screen, right? A couple things we don't do, right? We do not do people. You cannot look up personally identifiable information in the system. We are not facial recognition or any sort of biometric data. We are not used for traffic enforcement. We are a solution for police to identify investigative leads and to solve crime. And so just from the get-go, want you guys to know that this technology has a lot of great capacities, but there's also a lot of things that we don't and will not do. There's a couple ways that the system works that I want to describe to you guys, because you might have questions about each different avenue. The first is proactive. So our system will provide real-time alerts to officers when a stolen or a wanted vehicle passes by one of the cameras and enters into your city. These alerts come from the national database, the National Criminal Information Systems database, and it's associated with felony warrants, stolen vehicles, and can help your officers get ahead of those before they've entered your community. I didn't know this before working here, but stolen vehicles are actually a real issue for getting ahead of other crimes in your community. Oftentimes people don't even realize the number of stolen vehicles coming into their community, but people don't steal a vehicle and go for a joyride in a new car. Typically, individuals steal a vehicle in order to commit other crimes. And there's often a series of crimes in the wake of a single stolen vehicle incident. So we've seen our officers, in using these stolen vehicle alerts, actually be able to deter crime from their community because they got ahead of a potential serial instance. The other way that the system works is investigative, right? So this is where you go back in time and identify the vehicles that were potentially associated with a crime. We see this be a really effective tool for helping to clear case backlogs and to give your officers real-time leads after a crime has occurred. Both of these ways are really essential for the system to get its full functionality, right? So in the investigative portion, we only store the data for 30 days. So we don't collect a long-term amount of data. But we know that that 30-day period gives your officers enough information to be able to find the leads that they need and investigate. As a council, I think this is probably the most important part of the conversation. And as a local government policy person, this is the thing I get the most excited about. So some details of our partnership that are both in our contract and in the way that we've approached our agreements with law enforcement. You guys in Adrian will own your data. That means that we do not access it. We don't sell it or share it. You guys determine who you share your information with. And Flock has a really expansive network in Michigan. And that's actually very helpful for law enforcement to be able to share the images of cars, of vehicles, and figure out what vehicles are associated with concurrent crimes in different communities. It's important because other companies out there have traditionally sold data regarding license plate readers. They've stored it for a long time. And we just wanted to, absolutely not do that and make sure our customers know that we are in the business of helping law enforcement solve crime. We also see this as really objective data and objective information compared with the typical eyewitness accounts that often are misleading or might not have a complete information. And so it actually helps your officers be able to respond to things that they know are illegal instead of having to piece together potentially misleading information from witnesses. We're not connected to third-party databases. I mentioned that about the personal information, and we take cybersecurity very seriously. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about that. But the last two things for you guys to consider and thinking about joining us as a partner, we require an investigative reason for every single search that's done in our system. That investigative reason is attached to the individual who did the search, and it includes every detail of what they searched, what filters they used, when they searched, and that's proactively reported to your chief and anyone else who's a system administrator, so that they can make sure the system is being used in the right ways, right? We created that as a similar to the law enforcement network so that we can make sure that we're holding our officers accountable for using this data. And then the last piece is our transparency portal. And I know that Chief Emmerich plans on using this, but here is an example from Morgan Hill. And this is something that we created for our customers to be able to proactively share with their communities on an ongoing basis how this technology is used, what's detected, what's not detected, how it's not used, the number of cameras that a community owns, the number of organizations that have access to their information, and then some other return on investment data, right? So the number of searches that your officers are doing, the number of hot list hits that your community has received in the last 30 days. And we made this proactively so that you guys could be able to answer your community's questions and also see how the system is helping your department on an ongoing basis. I will end with a couple examples of how other communities have used our technology. So this is in Van Buren, and tragically, a woman was hit while she was walking late at night on a service road, a young mother, and the police found debris at the end of the service road from the vehicle that had hit her. Fortunately, they had actually installed Flock license plate reading devices at the end of this service road. And so they created a time window and found a vehicle that matched what the debris that they found, and ended up going and contacting that individual, and he confessed to having hit the woman. So in a situation like a hit and run, which is normally can be really challenging to solve, especially if the individual has left the community, this gave a real-time quick lead for officers to go after the individual who had hit this woman. Another example out of Dearborn, and this one I think can demonstrate the value of our network capacity, where we're able to share information about vehicles with multiple different departments, right? Even across states. This situation, I don't know if anyone saw this in the news in MLive, but tragically, this woman, this mother, was actually kidnapped by her girlfriend and another woman at the time. And they had no way to know where she was. They put out a hot list alert on the license plate of the woman that they thought would be involved. And then a couple weeks later, that license plate actually showed up in Dearborn, and they got a hit on the car. And so officers ended up pursuing this vehicle. And at the conclusion, they found this woman in the trunk of the car. It's believed that they were likely on their way to Canada. And so it's unclear if this case would have ever had a resolution and if her family and her children would have ever known what happened to her without having that data that provided police the ability to respond. This is an example from Rantoul, Illinois, and tragically they had a lot of gun violence in the summer of 2021, but they had previously installed flock devices, and you can read these on the screen, but really quickly they started to see a return on their investment by being able to identify suspects in shootings that they otherwise would not have been able to identify suspects in. A July 4th shooting where 5 people were injured, they found 2 suspects that were responsible for the gunfire. The very next month, there was another shooting and they used our technology to identify a suspect in under 14 minutes. And Rantoul's deputy chief is really happy with the quick ability that his officers have had to get information that they need to pursue cases. And especially in an information age, right, where we've all watched so many shows like CSI and NCIC, and we expect there to be really quick case resolution. This information, getting it to your officers quickly, can help add to that victim resolution that otherwise is sometimes hard to find. I'm happy to share about this Amber Alert, but I think I've given a good overview. So I'll just end in conclusion with talking about how you can see a reduction in crime over time. I mentioned that earlier when talking about the deterrence that some of our customers have described, but I think this is a good explanation out of San Marino, California, where over a year period, they saw about a 70% decrease in residential burglaries once they had the ability to use our data and get a hold of some repeat offenders that were committing the same crimes over and over again. I don't know if you guys have any questions at this point, but I'm happy to answer anything or have Chief Emmerich jump in with some examples where this might have been helpful.
So, commissioners, just so you know, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, it's about $3,000 per device to lease these devices for a year, and they come in pairs. So Chief has identified 5 locations that would be optimal for their use, so that's about a $30,000 commitment for any given fiscal year. Am I right about the cost, Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so we're tentatively plugging that into the budget that we're doing, anticipating that you might be supportive of this concept, but I'll open it up for discussion. See where
How many
what
other
you all
agencies in White County will be able to use this?
Well, once we started looking at the technology, we actually started an account with Flock, and we are able to access a number of agencies, both state and nationwide right now. So it's, as Laura said, it's our data, and we can share with other agencies as we see fit or not. So
Even if they're not utilizing Flock, so would this benefit the Illinois County Sheriff's Department?
yes, absolutely. We've solved a number of cases using Flock, and we don't own any Flock cameras. For example, you may recall last summer the shooting at a house party on Maumee Street. There was gunfire exchange. A young man was hit in the chest. That vehicle, we put out that information using the traditional method, the VOL, be on the lookout. So we put that information out, and a few minutes later, an officer down in Ohio south of here, all we had was, it was a white Envoy, rough year, and the type of wheels, I believe, the color of wheels that were on it. And he sent that plate and information to our detectives. So had an address right here on Locust Street, because he had been down through Sylvania or wherever it was 6 days early. So we are already benefiting from that, but just in that other agencies will share that information with us.
Am I correct that this is the technology that helped locate the recent vehicle for the recent shooting on Frank Street?
Yes, it had a part in that as well, yes.
It's just another tool in the toolbox. I've done a lot of research over the weekend about this, about the cameras, and a police chief in, I believe, Orlando said that, they have a lot more than what we have currently proposed, or I'm sorry, Greg and Vince have talked about. And he says, nobody comes to Orlando that we don't know who they are. You know, it's, I think bad guys, they hibernate where they're comfortable. I think there's another deterrent that shows the citizens that we have the most problems, that we're serious about combating crime, you know, and I think that's our obligation as elected officials, is first to keep the community safe. And again, you know, I appreciate Vince bringing this to us, and it's a change for the community, I think, that to have something like that, because, you know, you'll get the naysayers, like Big Brother, but my opinion is that if you're not doing anything wrong, what's there to worry about? And I'll stand to that, you know, so.
Is this something that the local law enforcement network could share in funding, or is it because who owns it that would be difficult? So is it possible to partner with the county on this and use marijuana funding to cover the cost of this? And partner with the sheriff's department, or is that something that would violate the confidentiality clauses?
No, I'm sure that would be possible. Laura, could you give an example of like private housing complexes, how Flock works there, or partnerships there?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So one of the great things about our business model is that we try to be a public-private partnership and a whole community solution. So in many other communities, we'll have the police that will purchase some devices, and then business owners, apartment complexes, school systems, colleges and universities, or large industrial complexes and neighborhoods will purchase devices that they'll then share the information with law enforcement. And those private customers don't have access to the features that our law enforcement customers have, but it's a way for them to provide the data that we know law enforcement need with that vehicle recognition technology.
When you say share, does that mean that they're all linked together? So that, or do you have to go through the idea of, I have this information here, this is some more? Or if they're in the same community, are they all linked together?
Yes, yes. So they would be linked for your law enforcement. Your law enforcement customers, or our law enforcement customers, will be able to see all of the private cameras within their the area with which they respond, right? And they can ask those users to share information with them. But the private users won't be able to see what the law enforcement see, right? So let's say you have a school and a neighborhood. Both of those groups could share their footage with your police department, but they couldn't share their footage with each other. And so they'd never be able to see what each other see.
You know, I love the idea of not taking pictures of people, you know, that's, I think that's a lot, that will curb a lot of concerns that, you know, maybe some citizens will have, and I just think it's, you know, we have some, it's all over the city, we have some issues, you know, and then I think that more surveillance, that's not taking pictures of people and actually just giving the police department more data that they can solve crimes or at least deter crime. I don't see a whole lot of downside.
I really like the linking with colleges and universities and other large businesses. And I think once they find out what this is doing, the benefits, I think they could jump on board and really be a really solid network in the city. I think it'd be great.
I know that Chief Emmerich and I have talked at great lengths for several years now about how we can't get police officers, and it's not, you know, that's just a national problem. You just can't get it, and like a lot of schools are starting to not even have that enforcement area within their studies anymore, because students aren't going into it and people just are not pursuing that line of work. And I feel like this is, you know, when Chief Emmerich and I talked, it's like, well, you know, we can only do so much. Like, we could offer a lot of money, and I still don't know how many we could get to come here, just because, you know, it's just a problem nationwide. And I feel like this is just like added enforcement without those bodies that are going to be very, very difficult to get. You know, my concern definitely also, just like Commissioner Halt, was, you know, because I knew there would be some flack if there was facial recognition and people feeling they're being watched. And I feel like that, you know, or traffic enforcement, you know, and so that alleviates all those concerns. But I just, not that I'm saying go crazy, but I just feel there's no dollar amount on public safety. I mean, I feel like we've got to get something in place here for this to get it safer here in this community. and get these crimes to, and I feel like they think they can come here and commit crimes because they know that this technology is not here, and they know that it's hard to catch them, and it's hard for these crimes to, because didn't you tell me before, Chief Hardwick, that a lot of them aren't even from here, they leave back out of town, this has become like their place to come commit crime and leave, it's not always local people, in fact, most of the time it's not, correct?
That's correct. The vehicle from our most recent homicide went back to Detroit after it happened, so. And also, you know, people who commit crimes here, people who are from Adrian, they leave town when they've done it. And going back to my detective days, there was at least three major cases where the people fled down to Florida. So no matter where they are, we will be able to see where they go.
I have a couple of questions, Laura, or Chief, I'm not sure who's best to answer. So first one is, can the cameras be damaged? Like if the criminals discover where the cameras are, can they shoot them? Can they, how do cities protect the cameras so that they're always in use?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in general, we don't see a lot of vandalism. So I'll start there. So it's definitely something to think about and be prepared for, but it's not something that I would expect to see often in your community, if at all. When communities have seen vandalism, it's typically through a car running into the pole. Our poles specifically, if the deployment map ends up using the poles we provide, they're on top of a concrete block. And they're about 12 feet tall. So it's challenging to damage these. It's not something easy. And so it requires something like a vehicle to run into them. And when that happens,
Shoot them,
there's a picture that's taken often.
so they couldn't shoot them or paintball them to make them not work.
That's definitely possible. It has not been an issue for other communities.
Got close enough to shoot it, would probably take a picture.
Yeah, you see it on TV, but it's not something you do really easy, I would think.
So that if, just because I like to think longer term, if a camera did get damaged and we lease it, is that on us that we have to pay for the repairs, or is that something that would be part of the contract, you would come and repair or replace?
Yes. So since we are always giving our customers access to the best technology, right? So if it happens naturally, that's on us to fix. So let's say there's lightning that messes things up or wind, we'll come out and repair that free of charge. If it is vandalism, we do charge a small fee that's articulated on, I think, one of the last pages of all of our contracts that outlines that vandalism clause. But like I mentioned, since most of it occurs with vehicles, we've seen communities actually file insurance claims against individuals who run the cameras over and are able to pay for it that way.
Oh, interesting. My last question that I as of right now, like, how many Flock agencies are there in the United States?
Yeah. So right now we're working with over 2,500 communities.
Okay.
John, do you have a few comments about the sort of the legalities of this technology?
Yeah, you may have noticed a couple of the slides that Laura presented had the title Protecting Privacy, and a couple of the questions, the comments that you made about facial recognition and security of individuals and sharing data. I suggest to you the reason why is because the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures. There have been 3 cases challenging the legality of various systems, one of which was United States versus Yang, in which an individual was driving in a rental car and was subsequently pulled over for a crime. And a group of attorneys challenged the subsequent arrest and the evidence that was collected, challenging the use of the cameras. And the court sort of backed out of the decision and said, because you're driving in a rental car, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy with regard to the exterior. Well, the same holds true with regard to license plates. various courts have held because they're visible to anyone. There have been two other cases, Kansas versus Glover and Commonwealth versus McCarthy, that it's a very limited use of surveillance, so to speak. So the capturing of the license plate data is good. If you were to take it to another step with regard to facial recognition or sharing data of individuals, driver's license, things of that nature, I have no doubt that it would undergo much stricter scrutiny from the courts and probably wouldn't survive. The good news is that they've made it clear that they're not collecting data on individuals. And I suggested to the chief, you also noted that Laura made comments about the retention of the data. It is very, very important based on these court cases that we do not retain the data for a limited amount of time. That we have a specific period of time that we maintain the data and then we purge the data, so to speak. And that we're not using facial recognition. And if we wanted to do a deep dive into other data sources that might exist, for instance, cell phone towers, right? Police agencies these days are using cell phone towers because every time we go near one, it beeps, and they're a huge source. People forget how our cell phones connect to a cell phone tower and they can pull lists. If we need to do a deep dive for additional information and reach out sometimes to other agencies or reach out, to other departments, the best thing to assure compliance is to get a warrant to do it and ask the court to issue a warrant to give us that data. And that is a very, very strong protection for the city of Adrian going forward. So the chief already has in his primary policy a very good section with regard to limiting and retention limits. We're going to add something with regard to the use of warrants. If necessary, going forward, that would be great. For the city of Adrian and other agencies as well, very good protections. You get a warrant, that's the judge giving you approval to do it, to seek more intrusive data regarding an individual from other agencies, things of that nature. Very easy to get. Thank you.
Anything else from the commissioners?
I really like the idea, and I like the idea of maybe partnering with the county or some other agencies, but we looked into asking, seeing if there are grants out there that would cover this cost.
Have not looked for grants. We explored the idea, one case that we had on South Main when one of our dispensaries was burglarized. It was the same group of individuals who had burglarized some businesses in Jackson. Came on over to Adrian. Jackson has LPR, so we were able to find them, but I don't know, approaching them for assistance with that sort of thing. Certainly grants are always an option. Burn Jag or some others, technology is always an option. It will be a subscription cost, which would be difficult. It's not usually something they're willing to fund, but
Right, it's not really a hardware cost, it's a lease base. Okay, well, thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Very informative, appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
So next this evening, if he's still with us, I just saw his name and up there he is. Scott Belts is here from Medallion Management. And rather than me giving you an update as to where they're at with respect to the repair of Riverview Terrace, I'll just turn it over to Scott. And very good news from Mishta here recently, but something of an ask from them as it relates to our pilot for the property. So Scott, if you can hear me, go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So thanks for having me. I appreciate this, being able to speak to everybody on more, especially the city, on more of a positive note, because most of the interactions I've had with the city itself has not been negative, but under a negative situation, and that's Riverview Terrace. As all of you know, in July of last year, the building became condemned. And we had to relocate. And again, thank you to the city and the fire department, the police department for helping with that whole process. 163 seniors. Since that point, we've been working diligently. It doesn't seem like it. I realize it seems like it's been forever. It certainly does for us as well, but we've been working very diligently to try to get our arms around exactly what the fix is and how to make sure that when we do fix the building, it's a permanent fix. And, I'll be honest with you, there was a couple of times where we weren't sure there was going to be a viable fix. And then once we got a structural engineering firm involved, and a construction firm involved, we got the fix, and then we got a price to do the fix. And basically then it comes down to being able to pay for it, which the initial repairs on the building is about 4.8 to 4.9 million. Which is a big number. We went to Mishta and asked for assistance because the building will be empty once they start for between 10 and 12 months. And there's obviously operating costs that go along with that. We've been, kind of our vendors and letting them know of the situation. Obviously, the city knows of the situation, but so we asked Mishta basically for 6.6 million, and the difference is basically operational costs and costs that's been incurred up to this point. So we got well, we're not 100% sure. We think it's going to be a potential grant, but there might be some loan in with it. We're not for sure yet. At the end of the day, the building will get fixed. It'll get fixed properly. It's not going to be a transition of ownership at all. The current owner is going to stay in. He actually had under the terms with Mishta. So the Mishta likes to see that everybody's participating, and an example of that is like for the management company, Medallion is foregoing our management fees and have for a few months here, just simply because the development can't pay us, and we're not there to bleed the development off or anything like that. So so we suspended our management fees, and part of the deal that we made Mishta on the $6.6 million is that right now the income percentage of somebody moving in is 60% AMI. So that means 60% of we can charge up to 60% of AMI for their rent. We have to lower that income limit down to a 50%, which simply means it just restricts our ability to raise rent in the future, which can be a problem with the development potentially in the future. And that's why we're going to the municipality asking for the pilot to be redone, reworked at a lower cost. Mishta also likes to see, the community. I actually had a conversation with them again today. They like to see municipalities, everybody gives in a sense. So the ownership has given, we've given, they would like for the city of Adrian to consider this pilot moving forward. Probably my guess is probably within 5 to 8 years, these current ownership will look to flip it. And the new ownership will probably be back in front of the board, whoever that is at that point, to ask for either an extension or a rework of the pilot or something to that nature. So I don't want the city of Adrian to think that this will be a forever thing. It's not, but in the time being, our real objective here is to get 163 of the residents back into their units, or at least as many as want to move back. And I think if this does anything, it shows that there is definitely a need in Adrian for this housing. And I just think that I want to thank everybody for the city for their support through all of this. And Greg, for all of his hard work. I know it's not been easy and it's not been fun for sure, but I think at the end of the day, we'll land on our feet and everybody will move forward and look back and hopefully we can say, oof, you remember that time frame? So, does anybody have any questions?
Scott, can you kind of explain the ask, what you have right now and what you're requesting?
Yep. So right now, I believe what it is, how it's structured right now is a 10% pilot, which basically is, the annual income, which right now we have no income. But there is a floor in the ordinance of 70,000 and plus some kind of an adjustment factor. So it's at a 10% pilot. I did not want, whenever I met with the city, I did not want the city to lose any money, because obviously we use their services, things like that. So I reworked it, and then with assistance from our attorney to draw up the ordinance, it would be equal to 1.5% pilot. And then a service agreement, a municipality service agreement to the city. And this would go up by an inflationary factor. But that would start out at, I think it was around 24,000. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to find that exact amount. But I believe it was around. So it's
I think it was 27. Yeah, I don't know.
27. It's revenue neutral to the city. So I didn't want to go in and take money out of the city coffer, city of Adrian, so to speak. And so that was why we typically would do a municipalities agreement. To be honest with you, this particular development probably uses ambulance service much more than a lot of other services. So the city of Adrian will actually receive, probably more money than they would have before on it. So that was one of my biggest concerns. I didn't want to do it with the idea of taking money out of the city's pocket. So
To be clear, in my mind, we've spent nearly $1 million already out of our city taxpayer. I know it's not directly on Riverview Terrace, but because of what happened, money has come out of our pocket that we may or may not ever recoup. So.
Yep, I can understand that. And I think, yeah, you bought the hotel for 100,000. So yeah, I can certainly understand that. My only response to that, I suppose, would be that, I'm hoping that once we get everybody moved out, I don't know what the city's plan is with the building, if they plan on selling it or whatever, and hopefully recouping some of that money. Again, my proposal here won't take any money out of the city, so to speak. So I don't want you to think I'm coming here asking, the city continue to get paid.
Greg, so right now we have a 10%, the old building had 10% pilot with no municipal agreement, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it was an ordinance that provided for 10% or the group greater of 10% or a number that was the floor that was 75,000 escalated by $1,500 a year for every year since 2004. And so in that, by way of example, in this year, I think that was up to $102,000.
Correct.
Now, what we've done for them for this year is we've put it back on the ad valorem roll because of the condition of the property. That's going to result in a tax bill around $43,000 for this year, which they understand and they're comfortable with. And we intend to repeal the existing ordinance, which is sort of a moot point at this point because there's no affordable housing being provided, and replace it with whatever you're comfortable with for the ordinance going forward, which will take effect in 2024.
So 10%, no municipal agreement. He's proposing 1.5% with the municipal agreement of $27,000 a year. Is that?
So as I understand it, the 27,000 will go directly to the city.
Right.
And then the 1.5% will be in the nature of a tax.
Right.
Distributed the way that.
Right.
That's
County, school and all that. So I'm asking you, so cost neutral for us when it comes outside of the asset we bought? When it comes to that property cost neutral then? I mean, we're not,
We gotta analyze the numbers.
Yeah.
To ensure that that's so, but. You know, what I would say is I think it's extremely important to get these units back to functioning. And this is what it takes to keep Michigan in the game.
Right.
So, you know, my recommendation would be to- So if,
Well, the alternative is it's very empty probably.
well, that's, I mean, yes, and, you know,
Which we don't
as you
want.
recall, we have a street block of a major street
Right.
closed because it's in the fall zone of that building, and, you know, we're still housing about 60 of the residents of the Adrian Inn who've been unable to find other permanent housing, and, you know, we just have a deficit of this sort of housing in the our county to the tune of 163 units that we lost. So we desperately want to replace those, and as you say, if we don't take this opportunity, not only don't we get those units back, but the building becomes worse and worse and worse to the point where now, you know, by way of comparison, the demolition costs for Bixby Hospital are on the order of $5 million. Just to tear that building down, and that's what the asbestos remediation already done.
yeah, I mean, it's as long as you and your team, whoever that may be, analyze the numbers, make sure that we're not losing from a service standpoint. You know, and then we'll deal with the asset once it's fixed.
How long was the 1.5% for 27,000 service agreement?
Well, it would stay in effect as long as the
For the-
regulatory agreement for the property stays in effect, but
Okay,
as Scott points out, the current owner's end game, if you will, is to sell it. He would have sold it now if he could have, but
Right.
it's a vacant building and it's condemned. So fix it up, stabilize it, and attempt to sell it at the point where he attempts to sell or succeeds in selling it. There will be a new ownership group, and that would be the time to renegotiate the pilot agreement.
Is Mischa looking for us to have skin in the game when it comes to the funds there to repair that building then? Is it?
Well, but by being flexible with that's what-
where we don't have to come up with anything, use any of our done.
Is that correct, Scott?
That's correct. Yeah, the MISH is not asking for anybody to come up with, the city to come up with any funds, just for the pilot to be approved, and they feel like that's support from the municipality.
And so if the commission's comfortable with this concept as described, we'll look at the numbers and then we'll try to get an agreement that we can recommend back on your agenda. Maybe next time if we could do it that fast. But, as soon as we can. But in any event, we've kind of got a solution for this year, as I say, by putting it back on the roll. And we're aiming for 2024 when the building will be occupied again. Yeah. Okay. Anything more you wanted to add, Scott?
Nope, I don't believe so. Thank you all for the time.
Okay, thank you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't have anybody from Smith Group here tonight to speak on this, but as I've made you aware from time to time, there's kind of been an adoption of Smith Group, if you will, who the ownership group with the Telegram properties initially engaged, but we look to them as the likely candidate to provide design services related to both the riverfront redevelopment project and the other projects associated with that grant that we got for downtown revitalization and blight removal. $15 million. It's currently being administered by Runaway now. And I don't know, last I heard, they were about to get the first half of that money. Should have come in really last week, was gonna be wired into them last week. So these aren't really city monies. I mean, they are in the sense that that was granted to the city, but being administered currently through Lenawee now, similar to the tunnel project. But I do want, you know, the city's the one who's engaging Smith Group. They'll be paid out of those funds, but I think it's appropriate and necessary that the commission approve the actual contracts. So they've given us two proposals. One is for the riverfront work, and this is not inclusive of the private property. This would not include the apartment properties, the telegraph properties, but rather what is envisioned surrounding those. And that consists of two things. One, streetscape for Winter Street through there, reimagining that to make it more like the rest of the downtown streetscape. And then to the degree that we can work it out, particularly with Citizens Gas, the redevelopment of the other property surrounding where the apartments are going to be adjacent to the river on both sides. So Citizens Gas owns property on both sides of the river. They are amenable to parting with it. We've had some initial discussions with them about an alternative site. I would say quite a bit of work left to do on that. And so that design is really contingent upon making a deal with Citizens to get the we would be able to receive know what we intended, yeah. And it started Winter Street work, which we had the ability to do, and to work with Citizens on getting them relocated out of that area so that the rest of that land would be available for public use. This, the proposal related to that involves quite a bit of community engagement as it relates to the design. They've got a series of steps, 5 steps basically, coming up with design alternatives based on community engagement. The total price tag for this process that will result in a final plan, and or I would say it's like a sub area plan to our Parks and Rec master plan, if you will, that deals more precisely with this area. It's $43,875. That's cost of this proposal. That again would come out of $15 million. The state has granted us for this purpose. So if you're comfortable with that, I would like to put on next meeting's March 20th agenda for action for approval, so that we can sign that and get them working. And then the other proposal that they gave us is to kind of reimagine Maiden Lane and the connection of Maiden Lane to the area that used to be the Gene Christopher building, the vacant lot on the corner of Maumee and Winter Street there. And I'll let Jay, it was his idea, speak some more about what that vision is intended to look like.
So multiple layers to the project, but essentially becomes an entrepreneurial ecosystem right there, where there's some small type sheds where startup businesses can go in there to grow, and with the objective of them growing into retail businesses in downtown. They do it very well in Muskegon. Quincy, Michigan, of all places, actually does it and has been doing it for, this is their 3rd year now doing that. So the businesses will go through an entrepreneurial class, essentially, and then they start up, and they've got a place to be during the warmer months of the year, May to December, with some, like a 200 square foot space. It'll be an indoor type of shed on that property. That would tie into Maiden Lane, making a green space, carrying it all the way back to Main Street. We see maybe some public restrooms in that area as well. And so this would be really to help us understand what that would cost. Give us some more public input throughout the process as well. and what that would look like, for some conceptual drawing as well.
Well, the price tag for that design effort, fewer tasks, 3 tasks involved, would be $16,500. So I'd like to put that out.
My question for Jay, that is how, what you just described, would that be like in partnership with Launch Lenaway, or would that be completely different?
We would be looking to utilize Launch Lenaway in that partnership as well, yes.
One of the things that might be in the offing here as we analyze you'll recall that we own 116 South Main, which is adjacent to Maiden Lane, as well as 118 South Main. Nearly in as bad a shape as 116. I think it may be the case that we're going to want to take down 116 South Main at some point. Really, really rough shape, a lot of mold and deterioration. The repairs on that building were not done very well, and water got in for years and years until we became owners. That really creates a lot of additional opportunity, though, as it relates to this concept. I've got an open space area there adjacent to the main corridor that can be utilized in similar fashion that is describing. This, and I'm hopeful that project funds, the $15 million, project funds would be available. It would not hit our general fund. That would be a pricey demolition.
Greg, I have one question regarding the Smith Group project, and you were talking about the Citizens Gas property. So that would all be part of the riverfront project. It would not be part of additional apartment projects, right?
Correct. It sort of wraps around whatever the private developers are able to secure. Currently, that's only the Telegram properties, and we're out trying to see if there's other opportunities along there. We will not be, with our funds, doing any of their work, any of their design work. Our fund improvements. Our funds are only lands that will be public land.
Has there been any talk of the other properties beyond the, well, I still look at it as the old Eagles building? There's a house there, and then there's another brick structure.
I think one of those properties may have been secured by one of those partners. I think they're trying to stay a little bit mum about it because price of real estate goes up as interest in that real estate goes up. So I don't know exactly what their level of interest is, but I know the mission in general is to improve that whole corridor. Really, the equivalent of one of our downtown.
Put it on the agenda.
Good, well, we'll do that then. Appreciate it. Since we got a little bit of time, Commissioner Gauss was talking about a work session for the budget. I had envisioned putting that on a pre-meeting like we had done in the past, which I thought probably was going to be the first pre-meeting in April. He's not going to be in town that day. Some possibility we can get it ready for your next pre-meeting, or the other alternative would be a special meeting, throw that out for discussion. Else would like to do this.
Well, yeah, I would like to be at the budget meeting since it's probably the most important meeting we have all year. Unfortunately, I'm not, fortunately for me, but not for the group, possibly I'll be on a cruise ship during the first meeting. So yeah, my preference would be either at our next meeting or a special meeting. We could do that.
Maybe
everybody was amenable to that.
If you're amenable, maybe we could pick an alternate date if we can't get it ready for March 20th, when we could meet for a special meeting.
Have to be soon after the 20th, because I leave on the 22nd.
Oh, well. I guess that.
I could leave on the 23rd.
So you're saying the 21st is the only other option?
No, we could do it the 22nd. or the
I cannot. do-
Let me complicate things.
Oh, no. God.
I will be here for the next meeting, but the next day I'm leaving for 10 days.
Oh, well, that's.
So you're both going to be gone for the April 3rd meeting.
Who else is? You are?
You two.
No,
No, you'll be
April
back.
3rd, I'm back.
Hmm.
I'm coming back on the 31st.
She's leaving
Oh,
for 21st.
When do you get back, Gordon?
Not until
How long is this?
the 10th. April
Wow.
10th. I haven't had a vacation since I got elected. Give me a break.
I'm not giving you a hard time. So
Oh, I know.
3 weeks in May and June.
So, and we're getting too late if he's not even back till the 10th, right?
We can't really, we want to adopt it. Second meeting in April if possible. We can go till May meeting.
But could we have a special meeting that week, sometime in the week of the 10th, and still get it on our second meeting in April the 17th?
Well, there's also the public hearing that we.
Yep, we have to have that. Yep. That's always done.
I leave the 21st through the 31st.
Really sounds like we need to make it.
We need to make it happen on March 20th is what it sounds like. Yes.
I'll be here, don't worry.
I'm not going anywhere.
Everybody here, Mark?
They're just sending a long premium across.
So that's the other part of it. Last time, I think we started either a half hour or an hour earlier. Usual.
I thought we started like at 4.
I think it might have been 4:30 when we closed.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility for everyone on March 20th?
Can we ask for,
You got a baseball game, that
Yeah.
football game, basketball? I will work on your schedule. You don't know how much I appreciate it.
It's fine with me, but it is.
You'll let us know what we need to do for you.
You know, I appreciate that.
can we ask for a consistent? Is it too much to ask for a consistent report from the department heads? Right now, they kind of come in all different shapes and sizes.
I like wills.
Yes,
I like those.
so do
One
I.
pager. What do you want?
We'll ask them for the well model.
Yeah, I like those as well.
Who's worse than Todd Brown? He was the worst.
Oh,
It's like line by
That's, yeah, that's hard.
summarize.
I do appreciate you guys coming with me.
Big
Well,
things, what are the changes?
I know they're payback. You know,
Sets.
more than
Of course, Will has the easiest time, because if he needs more money.
He pulls them with no
Right,
fun.
so-
Right.
You know, it's just.
If possible, and we, I.
I think our meeting with Will lasted about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If possible, that would be wonderful. Even if it's just a summary, you know. Because we're going to get it physically before that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we will have time to go through it on our own.
Yeah, I'm sure Greg's slashing too, so like, let's summarize a little bit. Let's get it.
It'll be.
Greg was a
Yeah,
little
it's,
funny last week.
it'll be
I
a-
attest to that. Greg had no brain by our agenda meeting because he's been in those meetings.
I still don't know where we're at as bottom line. We identify cuts. There's a lot of cutting to do based on.
All the faith in the world, you're gonna make sure that.
That's right.
What we present you will be balanced.
Do you think you can make it happen though by March 20th?
Well, we're
I
gonna.
mean, I'm being honest,
yeah,
asking that
we're
question.
gonna try to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You had to make it hard for Greg. See how? I'm just.
This kind of guy I am.
Okay, well, there,
And 4:30 is what you're thinking then?
that's the tentative plan.
Okay.
If we don't feel like we need all that time, we'll move it up, but
Okay.
tentatively plan on.
You gonna buy us dinner like the previous administrators have in the past, or?
Cookies don't do it for you? I mean, that's too early for that.
You love the cookies. I was thinking morning fresh, but. Yeah.
We know anybody that makes.
Pizza is another question. Pizza wouldn't be a bad.
We were, but our finance directors have all told us that we can't buy food.
That's true.
Yep,
That is true.
correct.
City-
I learned
city
that, I learned that
officials.
from
Yep.
MML. They taught me that.
Huh?
I have another issue that I want to talk about tonight.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Crimson Holdings. Seems as though my understanding is the stack is completed.
The stack is made.
It's not, it has not been. But I know that this past,
Laying on the ground.
okay, so the past week though, we've had terrible problems with the odor.
So what happened last week, we did not object to their request of the court to have 2 daytime days of operation to make up for the power outage. Well, I don't think they lost power, their suppliers and such did, and they were behind schedule. So the judge allowed them 2 days, was it Wednesday and Thursday of last week?
It turned out to be Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday last week to operate during the day. The order, their motion and the order ended up specifying their schedule then as well for getting the stack up. When they brought the stack initially, the roof structure of the building was not as they had anticipated. And it couldn't be supported, and so they laid it down and have been designing a modification of the roof system to support the 100-foot stack. They committed in the order, I think, to March 14th is the date by which the stack would be up. So the judge's standing order allows them then 2 weeks to operate during the day.
Yes.
Sort of as an evaluation period, once the stack is up.
Right.
And that's when we'll see if it works. But right now, they should be back to nighttime only operations, and I guess I would say, you know, given all, we got a massive number of complaints when they started daytime operations again. So based on that, I would say that, you know, the nighttime operation scenario has been helpful because we don't get that many complaints in a normal.
You get some, but yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And Eagle has been a part of this whole process.
They have had their own process, which has sort of been an evaluation process and an exploration process, I would say. Never resulted, there is an administrative consent order, I think, that they have with them that has some financial penalties for failure to resolve the problem, but they have not been willing to take any action to stop them from operating.
But essentially, it was up to the judge to allow them to work during the day.
Yes, like I said, we did not oppose their
We could have
motion.
Objected, but the judge could have said, yeah, we're gonna.
Go ahead. I don't know what she would have done. We did not.
Are we sure they only ran those 2 days? Because I know there were complaints Wednesday, because I met with Greg Wednesday and he asked me if I could smell it, because I work right by there and we've had a lot of complaints by where I work.
It may have been Wednesday and Thursday.
Just making sure that they didn't
They put
take
out
that
2 days.
and run with it and expand it. Just making
I
sure.
don't believe they did. I'm sorry to interrupt. We did receive a lot of complaints through social media, through
Yes.
phone calls, the court received complaints. Mr. Elliott had a very good suggestion to put within the order their scope of work and when it's going to be done. We are going to be out there monitoring. We've been in touch with the state of Michigan to make sure that they are in the area. Because what we're definitely afraid of is that while it may be 100-foot stack, that the immediate area may be spared some of the odors, but it just may travel further distance down. We're hoping that there are adequate scrubbers within the stack, the technology is being used, and they're required under the initial restraining order to consult with the state of Michigan and to consult with other people that are using similar technology to try to abate the nuisance, so to speak. They remain, their appeal remains pending in the circuit court. We're going to attack that vigorously as well. We believe that Judge Shaver made a very good decision. And we're going to continue to monitor it without a doubt.
Because my fear is that I noticed the number of complaints I was receiving, plus since I work right by there, is it was warmer weather is when we really smelled it even worse. It was a lot worse. And so we're heading into that. So that also concerns me.
They made a couple comments on social media, at least one employee did, try to tell us to back off a little bit, be patient, that they're instituting some new procedures within the physical structure of the plant as well. We just have to see. I'm not extremely confident that this stack is going to solve the problem. I think there's other technology that they've got to make bigger investment in that a similar facility is using in Michigan that they don't want to explore right now. But we'll see. And we will be stationed around the city, the assistance of the administrator and staff, make sure when they are operating that things are going well, that it's just not transferring the odor problem down several blocks or down a half a mile, things of that nature.
Are people supposed to still send complaints through the link through Eagle though, or are they just sending them to us?
Yeah, and we would encourage anyone to not only notify the city of complaints, but to go on to the state's website as well. The state of Michigan's been very helpful. They offered testimony in our support during the initial hearing, and we'd encourage them to make the state aware as well.
Once the stack is up, it'll be important for people to let us know. So we have a 2-week window there that the court's going to allow them to operate fully. We will be the ones conveying that information back to the court. Whether it's successful.
Will we be advising the public when the daytime startup starts? Okay.
Can I go back to Adrian? Do we have an update from Housing Help? Of how it's going? Chief, are things okay out there? You know, do we know anything? Is it full? I don't know anything about it right now.
I don't think it's full. I question of them as to whether they put anybody else in there, and the indication was that they have. That they moved some other residents in besides the initial Riverview Terrace folks, and as I said, I think there were still about 60 of the Riverview Terrace folks in there. Oh, Commissioner Cassidy, do you know any more?
I don't have a lot of data. Yeah, I believe there's 72 open rooms, if I am remembering correctly. I think they have less than 60 Riverview Terrace people in there now. But they have been moving other people in. Keep trying to keep the room still.
I would appreciate an update whether they come in person or.
It's not like the rents, how are we doing like collecting the rents?
Right.
Are you getting payment
Yeah.
or that process working too, because it is our assets.
Right. It does, they don't have to be in person, just if we could get items or something, at least this type of conversation.
I don't have my notes on me, but I can speak just a couple of things on that. I do sit on the Housing Help Board, so if you like, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so, yeah, I think it was 71, 72 units. And Lynn might have some information on this as well, but something like 59 of them are still Riverview Terrace people. We have brought in some more others to fill in those who've been on lists. There have been some little issues logistically, just because we're not used to such a large facility. So there have been a couple of hiccups, but things are running. Like we had to put in some new procedures, because again, much larger than the other ones. So put in some new procedures, but the rents are coming in. They're significantly cheaper than they were because of the smaller rooms, etc. we're working on making sure that everyone has access to all the things. There were some new issues with the roof. I think the city might have been contacted about that or would be soon. The roof that was repaired has had a couple of small leaks after some of the weather recently. And recently, as in like the last housing help me was like 2-3 weeks ago. So the city might have already been contacted about that. And there are some other things that we're looking at doing, but so far it's working. I didn't try to field any specific questions, but there's just a quick overview.
Thank you. Mayor, if there's no other discussion, I'll turn it back to you for public comment.
At this time, we will begin public comment. There is a 3-minute time limit, and you will hear the alarm go off if you go past that 3-minute time limit. And for the record, please state your name and address. We will start inside the city chambers first. And after we are complete with public comment, we will then open it up to the Zoom participants.
Hello, Gene Ramos, 422 South Winter Street. Wow, it's been a long time since I spoke here, hasn't it? Anyways, and so I just want to make a couple notes and some of the things mentioned recently in the meeting. Fox security, I definitely had some hesitation reading about it and stuff, but there's going to be no facial recognition, etc. That does help put my mind at ease a bit. I would like to see ways pursue a little more, like know more about where the chief thinks is best to place these, or if he has that information for you, because we didn't have time for it all. But I would definitely like to get more info about it, but overall it does sound pretty good, and I'm glad that it's not going to be getting people's identifying people, etc. And I'm glad that City Attorney Blue was able to point out where the limits were of what this technology can do legally, so we all have a good understanding of that. And then on the review, Terrace 5, of course, I have some issues with the way that it was done. The fact that we had some of these issues come up that could have been dealt with a bit sooner, but I definitely encourage you guys to indeed do this. Another thing they're asking, and to see if we can get that up and running, because even if the residents don't go back, I'm sure many of them still want to. I regularly hear that many of them still want to. Even if not all of them go back, that's still very much needed in our community. In fact, we need more affordable housing in our community, so we need several more of those. But also we need a lot of transitional housing units, so we'll have the review pairs. But the review people went back to that because that's where they felt more comfortable, and really has more room. Then we put more of the people into during that transitional period, and hopefully there'll be more housing then, but that's going to be a constant issue. But I definitely encourage you to further do this, and I definitely encourage you to work with housing help on the transitional housing. A lot more about that. I think that's all I have for now.
Mayor, one final thought on the cameras. I didn't bring this out. I was hoping Laura would share the coverage map. This is not complete. Building your coverage map is kind of like adding friends to your Facebook. You know, you add them as time goes on. So this is just the local area, and these are the ones that we can see right now. So I imagine we'll pick up a lot more as time goes on, but this will give you an idea of participation.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
between Morenci and William. That's interesting.
Well, you'll notice some of the communities, Farmington Hills and Sylvania, it almost looks like they build a wall around the entire perimeter. All the streets coming in are going out.
There's one between Morenci. There's nothing between Morenci.
Yeah.
Even in the sunset.
I like Farmington Hills.
I guess it's maybe.
But
All right, any other public comment inside the chambers? Hearing none, I will now open it up to the Zoom participants.
Ken Tokars, 110 South Locust. So basically 27,000 divided by 163 comes out to about $165 per unit. for Riverview Terrace. Not a lot of money when you kind of ask to create special assessment districts up to $2,000 or $4,000 for an initial taxpayer. With Riverview Terrace, I wish you would throw that if you're going to do the pilot, make the medallion buy the hotel for the $850,000 that you paid for it. Later this evening, you guys are going to rezone a property north of town because it was quote unquote zoned incorrectly, which is somewhat coincidental and convenient considering that rezoning was necessary to give a piece of property away for a for-profit business that to date has not paid any city taxes. But you guys have no problem creating special assessment districts. My understanding of a special assessment districts are that they are a tool for property owners to communicate an unfunded need or improvement to city leaders that would increase the value of their property or provide an enhancement, like a boat launch for a group of neighbors, the residents asking for a gravel road to have it paved, and agreeing to pick up the cost through a special assessment for a developer to build a subdivision. A great example of a special assessment district was when the DDA asked the commissioners to replace the streetlights. The DDA participated in the process. The DDI changed the order after it had been placed, and the DDI should have paid for a portion of the cost of the new streetlights, as their properties would benefit from those streetlights. It is my understanding that in this scenario, the DDA lights are being considered a benefit to the community as a whole, and that the best benefit was not specific to DDA properties. So an SAD was not created for the DDA. I have an issue with this because when it comes to street improvements which benefit the community as a whole, the Adrian City Commission now makes the claim that the individual property owners are benefited by the new curb and gutter. Make up your mind. If the commissioners believe that residential property owners benefit from street improvements, why hasn't the city created a special assessment district for the DDA curb and gutter, the DDA brick pavers, the DDA streetlights, or the DDA streets which have been paved 3 times since 2006? It is a double standard, just like not requiring businesses to be part of the point of sale debacle. Public Act 51 appropriates City of Adrian with funds for local repairs from voter-approved taxes that consumers pay when they purchase fuel and register their vehicles. According to Public Act 51, the city can only raise funds for road repairs through a voter-approved road millage.
Your
And the
time is
decision of
up.
the
Thank
commissioners-
you. Hearing no more public comment, may I get a motion to adjourn?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned and
8 minutes to 7.
we will begin at 7. I call to order the Adrian City Commission meeting for March 6, 2023. If everyone would please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Halt,
Present.
Commissioner Roberts,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Strayer,
Present.
Commissioner Castleberry. Present. Commissioner Gauss,
Present.
all commission members present.
May I get a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
I have a motion from Commissioner Halt with a second from Commissioner Castleberry and Commissioner Miller. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Halt,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Strayer.
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry.
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss.
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
consent agenda adopted by a 6-0 or 7-0 vote.
Under our regular agenda, under ordinances, Ordinance number 23-002 is a second reading and consideration of an ordinance to amend the City of Adrian zoning ordinance, section 3.1 of Article 3, to the extent of deleting 2930 North Adrian Highway from the planned unit development district and including the same in the I-1 light industrial district. May I get a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Support.
Are there any public comments? Are there any commissioner comments? I have a motion from Commissioner Gauss with a second from Commissioner Strayer. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Strayer,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Hou.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted by an all yes vote.
Moving on to special orders. Special order -1 is a public hearing to hear and consider comments regarding the special assessment role for SAD number 397 for Helm, Rogers, Lenawee, and Rogers Court. At this time, I will call the public hearing to order, and anyone wishing to speak on this may do so at this time.
Yeah, I'd like some more details as to what's going to be happening, how the building's going to go.
Can you state your name and address? Sorry.
Alan Morgenthaler, 615 Helm. And I was just wondering how the building's going to be going. Because this says we are going to be owing for curb and gutter, new sidewalks, which I replaced about 25 years ago. New driveway approach, which I did at the same time. And my stuff's still in good condition. Why do I have to replace it?
We cannot reply back to you, but we will ask for some clarification when we get to the resolution.
Okay, so you don't have any idea how the building's gonna go either.
We're going to get to that. We can't respond to you during public comment.
Ah, okay.
I now call that public hearing closed. Moving on to special order -2, a public hearing to hear and consider comments regarding the special assessment role for SAD number 398 for Tecumseh Street. I now call the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to give comments may do so at this time. Hearing no comments, I now call the public hearing closed. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution R23-006 is from engineering. It is a resolution to establish the special assessment district for SAD number 397 for Helm, Rogers, Lenawee, and Rogers Court. May I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move we adopt the resolution.
Support.
Before we open it up for public comment, I'm going to ask City Administrator Greg Elliott to address the concerns that were brought up during the public hearing.
So there was an amount that was established as the local portion of the project that should have been in the notice that was sent out to all the property owners affected. And that will be divvied up according to frontage on the street. Matt Tomaszewski, our engineering services director, I think is online. Matt, can you speak to that in any greater detail as it relates to the Lenawee, Helm, Rogers, SAD?
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
So the amount that was established was around 360,000. And as Administrator Elliott mentioned, that amount will be divvied up among the residents living along Helm, Rogers, and Lenawee based on their measured frontage. So that frontage is based off a percentage of the entire entirety of the project. And then that will be divvied up among each resident accordingly. That cost will cover the whole project, so you'll be paying for the project as a whole, not specifically for the curb in the drive approaches, but the project as a whole.
And Matt, is this a reconstruct or what's the scope of the work that's being done?
Yeah, this is a complete reconstruct.
So given that you need to take out all the existing curbing, driveway approaches, so on, and you start from the base back up, is that right?
That's correct. So we'll be taking all the curb and the drive approaches out. And from that point, we'll build back up and regrade the entire street, add some storm structures throughout this project as well to create better drainage in the area.
Is there any sidewalk work being done?
There is some sidewalk work. What we're asking the residents to pay for is if the sidewalk creates a hazard. So if there's a trip hazard, we will be assessing based on each person's sidewalk.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Are there any public comments pertaining to this resolution? Are there any commissioner comments? So just to clarify, Matt, I guess I do have a question. So just to clarify, if their sidewalk is not a hazard and not in need of repair, it will not be done and they will not be assessed for that?
That is correct. They will not be assessed for it, but there are sections in that subdivision that are up further in the property owner's property. So we're going to bring that closer to the roadway, and they will not be assessed for that portion. The city will cover that expense, but the property owners will only be assessed for each square that is considered a hazard.
Okay, so just to clarify again, so if it's where you're moving the sidewalk, they will not be assessed. It's if it's up and it's a hazard.
That is correct.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Halt with a second from Commissioner Castleberry and Commissioner Miller. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Strayer,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Halt,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Resolution adopted by an all yes vote.
Moving on to resolution R 23-007 is from engineering. It is a resolution to establish a special assessment district for SAD number 398 for Tecumseh Street. May I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move to adopt the resolution.
Support.
Are there any public comments pertaining to this resolution? Are there any commissioner comments? I have a motion from Commissioner Roberts with a second from Commissioner Miller. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Strayer,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss.
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Halt,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
resolution adopted by an all yes vote.
Moving on to public comment. We will begin inside the city chambers first. Just to reiterate, there is a 3-minute time limit, which you will see on the screen. And for the record, please state your name and address. After all public comment is finished within the city chambers, we will then open it up to the Zoom participants.
Hello, long time no speak. Of course, Joaquin Ramos, 422 South Winter Street. I just want to say real quick, Fridays, second Fridays, A3 will be down at the library. See you there. And of course, I have to say big thanks to the library for letting us be there, but also they already have a sign up. It might still be up by the time we're out of here. And it's exciting. Hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Ramos, what time again?
It will be starting at 6 p.m. at the Adrian District Library. If you come on in, you can't miss us. And it will be going till just a little bit before 8 because we do want to allow them to get home at a decent time as well.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Michael Lear. My address is 123 East Maumee Street. Sometimes extraordinary things happen through acts of God, and we all experienced that during the past couple of weeks with the major power outage from the Detroit Metro Airport all the way south. And my comments are not an indictment of Consumer Energy. I think they did an extraordinary job. And I actually saw many out-of-state trucks on our streets, including Marion, Indiana, which I had never ever heard of. And I think they had about 30 trucks here. My concern is I just live steps away from the city hall, and I'm aware that you do have an electric generator that kicks on automatically once the power outage happened. The extraordinary thing for me during this experience was the city hall lights were on, and there was a sign in the front door, City Hall is closed today. Unfortunately, a lot of us, or fortunately, do not have landlines any longer, and power is required to charge our cell phones. And fortunately, on the other side of Maumee Street, the businesses did have power, so I was able to take advantage of that. But when I asked the question, why is the city hall lights on and you don't have a warming center here? You don't have a power center for people to charge their cell phones? The answer I had was people are inside working and it's close to the public. My concern is not a face from Adrian made a public announcement on the radio. There was nothing done for the citizens of Adrian. And on Thursday, the next day after the power outage, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that our neighboring city of Tecumseh publicly announced that their city council chambers would be open to the public as a warming space and for phone charging. No such thing was done in Adrian. My personal experience was that I was able to charge my phone across the street from neighboring businesses. And on Saturday, unfortunately, the power came back on Friday night and went out again Saturday. I hadn't contacted my family for probably 4 days at that point, and I didn't know what to do. Most of the businesses on the other side of the street on the weekend were closed. So I ventured down to the city police department in hopes that I would be able to charge my cell phone. There was a sign on the window that said, closed due to weather, no phones. Keep in mind, I was totally unaware because I was without power that the 911 services were lost during this time.
Sorry, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hearing no more public comment within the chambers, we will now open it up to the Zoom participants. You will see your time on the screen, and please state your name and address for the record as well. Hearing no public comment, I will now open it up for commissioner comments. Commissioner Castleberry?
I would, speaking of the weather, the last couple weeks, that was some very long hours and crazy incidents for our law enforcement, our firefighters, our shovel trucks or whatever you call it. Snowplows, thank you. Shoveling, I hate shoveling, but anyway, you guys did a fantastic job. Little sleep, I mean, hands down, you guys were awesome. So thank you for all that you put in and all that you did for the citizens of the city the last couple weeks.
Commissioner Halt?
I just want to give thanks to our police chief, Vince Emmerich, and our city administrator, Greg Elliott, for really taking some of our concerns to heart. Again, you know, projects are fun, splash pads are fun, dog parks are fun, but the meat and potatoes of the community is public safety when it comes to crime and blight remediation. And I'm so pleased that, you know, my colleagues and I have taken this in the forefront and realized that this is a problem that we need to support and to give the resources for Vince's department and the tools in that toolbox to continue to keep us safe. You know, a lot of times commissioners over the years, I've been following the city way before I got here 7 years ago, and they said they wanted to remediate blight. They said they want to get our crime rate down, and nothing really was done. But now I think that with the attention that's, you know, when it comes to our blight program and the traction we're getting, I truly believe those two issues go hand in hand. So I want to thank him for bringing this initiative. You know, a lot of public input we need to take in still, but I'm excited about the opportunity to make real positive change.
I just want to thank, during this time, you know, this was unprecedented during the ice apocalypse, whatever we want to call it. I've heard it called that. You know, many were without power, including many of our city workers. And I'll tell you firsthand, going out, seeing if there was anything they needed or anything going on, and going out and meeting with some of them. It was like 7:30 at night. And our city engineer was out there working right alongside his employees. Our project manager was right there alongside, working alongside their employees. Our Parks and Recreation director, they were out there as well. They weren't sitting in their offices like they probably could have been and directing people around. They were out there. And I just publicly want to thank Matt, Brett, and Jeremiah, just for being out there and setting that example and working alongside, and just all the DPW and Parks and Forestry workers for all they've been doing. I know they still have a lot to pick up. It's not close to over. And there's still a lot to do, but and I know the public's been pretty gracious with them and pretty thankful. I've heard stories where they're taking things out, like coffees for them to drink and things like that. And that's great to hear that they're being so receptive. But just, there's been a lot of hours put in by these groups, and many of them were going home to no power as well, or maybe housing family members, as many of us probably were. I know I was housing family members because they did not have power for many days as well. So just thank you to the city employees for all they did. You know, this is something unprecedented. We've learned from it. You know, going forward, there's things that, you know, maybe we can work on, but, you know, we can't figure out how trees are going to fall, and that you're going to have an ice storm and then turn around and have a big snowstorm right after that. And there's just been some wacky weather, and it's been a lot of very long hours for many of those employees. And so I just want to thank them. May I get a motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.